Hi, I'm Yvette Jones, and this is Talk Fulton. On today's show, the fight to end child sex trafficking in the Atlanta-Fulton County area, from the State House to the courthouse. We'll have a conversation with the head of the county team trying to make a difference. Talk Fulton starts right now. We're talking today about how Fulton's top leaders in government and the justice system are addressing a major issue plaguing the county, the issue of human trafficking. According to the Urban Institute, Atlanta is the sex trafficking capital of the United States, and the sex trade involves girls as young as 12 years old. So what is the plan to deal with this problem? FGTV's Priscilla Ortega has our story.
The human trafficking issue exists in North, Central, and South Fulton County, yet very few of those cases land here in the Fulton County Courthouse. Justice leaders say part of the reason is because those who are abused are too afraid to take the steps to turn in their abusers.
They tell y'all, that's my boy.
In a dramatic presentation, actors portray a scene that is too often reality in the Atlanta, Fulton County community. Young girls being sexually exploited for someone else's financial gain. This scene was presented during a forum hosted by the Buckhead, Cascade City chapter of the Links organization. Fulton judges, commissioners, and civic representatives tackled the issue, hoping to start a conversation that will lead to solutions in eradicating the problem.
What we're seeing in the court are children, young men and young women, some as young as 12, 13, who are coming in on misdemeanor charges, affray, fighting, loitering, charges that once you probe, it gives you an indication that the children perhaps may be being commercially exploited.
Each month, over 7,000 men in Georgia purchase more than 200 girls, averaging between the ages of 12 and 14 for sex. In Atlanta, over 42% of the men live north of the city's perimeter.
Collectively, we're ready to get rid of this blight on our reputation. It's been happening for years behind closed doors on dark streets, and we want to finally make sure that we protect our children and that we prosecute and put away the criminals.
The director of Fulton's Youth Spark program, an organization who works directly with victims to get them the services and the support they need, said most of the girls in her group are being exploited in their very own communities. The Assistant Attorney General with the state of Georgia, who specializes in human trafficking, agrees, but says resources are available.
There are organizations, grassroots organizations, governmental organizations that really put a focus on finding human trafficking in Atlanta and eradicating human trafficking from Atlanta and helping the survivors of human trafficking. And I think that's one reason we see such a big problem with human trafficking is that we're really looking for it and really addressing it.
Fulton's chairman agreed to launch a human trafficking task force to adequately address this issue. And many in the forum agreed to join him in that fight. Now, the mission will be to get and keep young girls out of the human trafficking business and to get the current buyers into the courthouse and behind bars. Reporting in downtown Atlanta, I'm Priscilla Ortega for FGTV.
Now, Jennifer Swain from Youth Spark joins us now to talk more about this troubling trend. Welcome to the show, Ms. Swain.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Now, it seems like you wear a few hats in this campaign to end sex trafficking. Tell everyone your role in this issue.
Well, first and foremost, my role is just a concerned citizen. I'm really passionate about women and girls and making sure that children are able to live the life that they're supposed to live. I am the current interim executive director for Youth Spark, the anti-trafficking organization formerly known as the Juvenile Justice Fund that was the first agency created right here in Fulton County, and today we're still based on the front lines at the Fulton County Juvenile Court.
A lot of work ahead of you. Now, let's start with the basics. For people who are completely in the dark about this issue, give them a basic understanding of what is happening in our communities with regard to sex trafficking.
Well, trafficking, that word in itself has become something that's been either very taboo to talk about or overly sensationalized. The issue is that when you think of human trafficking, your mind might take you to somewhere international, that this is not a problem that's happening right here. But trafficking happens in every single culture, in every single community. Right here in Georgia, in the metro area, it just looks differently.
And we can't live in denial. I mean, I read the stats earlier. Atlanta is considered the capital of this kind of activity.
Well, Atlanta is definitely a hub. Anytime you have major cities, anytime that you have a high convention tourism bureau, you're going to have people who are looking to exploit children, to exploit people in general. But there's a lot of reasons why Atlanta has become a hub for this issue. But I'm very glad to say that we are also leading the nation in our response to protecting children against this form of child abuse.
Now, you mentioned hub, but where specifically are we seeing this type of activity?
Well, I think one of the things is just to recognize is that it just doesn't happen only in the downtown area. This is not an issue where it's only focused on or it only affects one community. It actually happens in every community throughout the state of Georgia. We have research that shows on different areas where the demand for prostituted children are, but it really happens in every single community. It just looks differently. And when you talk about the purchase of a minor for sex, you don't have to pick up that child and take them somewhere else in order for them to be trafficked. They just have to simply be bought and sold.
Now, in your opinion, how has Atlanta become such a hub?
Well, we're a thriving city. Atlanta is known for a lot of great things. The number one thing that you have to recognize is that we have an international airport here, so you're going to constantly have a number of flights going in and out every day, people who may not live in our city traveling through. There's about 2,500 flights that go in and out of Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport a day. We also have a major highway system that runs right through our state. So on top of those two major things alone, you have a lot of people traveling throughout your state, and it connects you to other cities that makes trafficking even easier for other people in surrounding areas. But we also here in Atlanta have something very differently, and that is a very sensational adult entertainment industry. And that's one of the ways that this problem is perpetuated.
Now, can you tell me how these young ladies find themselves in these situations? Are they primarily runaways?
Well, I think you make a great statement because we say ladies, we say young girls a lot, but we recognize that this problem is happening to boys as much as it's happening to girls. And one of the biggest misconceptions is that they should just get away from it. They shouldn't want to do this issue. They shouldn't want to be there. But being on the front lines at the Fulton County Juvenile Court, I've seen cases where we have 13-year-old girls or 14-year-old girls who really believe that that 30-year-old man is their boyfriend. They really believe that this is a guy who's promised to take care of them when they basically lack the basic needs of life, which is food, shelter, and clothing. And if you are under the age of 18, you are considered a minor, and minors lack the mental capacity to sell him or herself for sex. They just can't do it. That's why we believe that there is no such thing as a child prostitute.
And it seems like along those lines, there needs to be some retraining in the young people's thinking about who they are and what their value is.
Absolutely. We use the word victim a lot, but I've really been able to see and witness how girls and boys who've been victims of this come out on the other side as survivors. We really have to retrain the way that they think, the way that they trust individuals, the way that they sometimes fear social services, and they fear providers because these young people do not self-identify as victims. They really don't believe that they are a victim of a crime. They believe that they're doing what they have to do in order to survive because the adults in their life have failed them often.
Now tell me about how your organization is involved in this effort.
Well, Youth Spark was created in 1999, early 2000s, under the leadership of Fulton County Judge Nina Hickson. And we were created and we owned and operated the first safe house. It was called Angela's House. And it was the first safe house created in the southeast region of the United States. Our journey over the last 15 years has changed, but we've really blazed the trail from services to prevention. And throughout all of these things, we must have research and numbers. So we've been able to create research, but yet go a step further and not just focus on the victims, but also focus on the men who do this.
This is such an interesting and important conversation. Let's take a break here. When we come back, we'll talk about what you can do to join the fight, and we'll talk about how this issue has found its way to the State House. Stay with us. Welcome back. We've been talking with Jennifer Swain with Youth Spark, an organization whose mission is to end child sex trafficking. Welcome back to you, Jennifer. Now, we've been talking about the stats, and as alarming as those numbers are, we must remember that there are real children behind those numbers. And you've got some interesting stories to tell about some of these young people. Would you mind sharing some?
I think I hold in my heart some of the girls that I've been able to work with because they really give me the fuel and give me what I need to keep going. I'll talk about one case, one of the very first cases that introduced me into this world, and I'll call her Maria. Maria was just like any other 14-year-old girl, you know. She just really wanted to hang out with her friends. She really wanted to, you know, find out what makes her happy and hang out after school. And, you know, one of the things that we take for granted is that kids need parental accountability. But Maria didn't have a lot of rules. Maria really was one of those kids who came in and didn't have someone who was at home waiting for her. And traffickers recognize when children are vulnerable. And there was an older man that began to take to her, and he really began to kind of walk her home from school, show up there when he knew that no one else would be there. He befriended that child. He began to offer that child mentoring, a helping hand. And he began to talk to that child. And I've heard cases where traffickers say that I will talk to your child longer than you will. And that's exactly what he began to do. And he found out everything that Maria had and was lacking in her life. And he began to say, I will protect you from that. She really didn't believe him until she told him about the sexual abuse that she was encountering from her mother's boyfriend. Her mother's boyfriend would come into her room every night at 11 o'clock, and he'd begin to have sex with her. And he said to her that if your mother found out that I thought that you were prettier, you would hurt her. And when she got up enough courage to tell Mom, Mom didn't believe her. But this guy who told her that he was her boyfriend, this 30-year-old who told her that he loved her, said that I will protect you from him. And that was the beginning of their relationships. It only takes a short amount of time to desensitize young girls and take them through the grooming phase. The grooming phase takes about 2 to 3 weeks where it becomes this glamorous lifestyle. He's there for you, he's taking care of you, he's allowing you to be adult. She talks about all of the great things. She sat back and smiled when she said, I went to every restaurant on Peachtree Street. He made her feel good. And one day he said to her, I've been taking care of you, now it's time for you to help me take care of us. And her job was to have sex with 3 of his friends that night.
This sounds like a cautionary tale for parents on the front end of this problem. What should parents be doing and saying, and how should they be engaging with their young people?
Well, I'm really glad that you brought up what can parents do, because this issue is one issue that cannot be taken care of by law enforcement alone. This is not an issue that we can just lock up people, because as long as we are out here rescuing victims, we will always have victims to rescue. We have to now put the resources and tools in our community's hands, in the parents' hands, in the schools' hands, so they can help us, number one, identify girls who are vulnerable and connect them to community resources. One of the things that we're working very hard to do is to create teen-friendly education and materials so that children can be involved in this fight. Some people really don't believe we should be talking to kids about this issue. They believe that we should be protecting it. I say we have to include children in the conversation. Teenagers already know about it, they just don't know it have a name. So we really want to empower parents to start that conversation early, and we provide tools and resources for free on the Youth Spark website that parents can access.
I'm glad you mentioned the website, because your website at youth-spark.org talks about igniting justice and igniting change. Well, it appears for the 2015 Georgia General Assembly, that's the conversation as well. Tell us about the safe harbor legislation.
Well, safe harbor legislation is really something that a lot of states are looking to, because we recognize that children lack the mental capacity to sell themselves. We also recognize that the federal trafficking law states that force, fraud, or coercion does not have to be proved when the child is under the age of 18. So what we recognize is that there needs to be a level of education so that we don't treat victims as criminals. Sometimes if you take a child and you rescue them from a heinous situation and you lock them up, that child feels like they've done something wrong. They feel penalized. It's almost as if you call the police because someone's broken into your house, and when the police arrive, they turn you around. They put you in the back of the car. They put you in handcuffs, and when you get into a jail cell, I come into your cell and I say to you, you've been a victim of a crime. Let me help you. That's sort of what we've done. Although we have a lot of great judges, a lot of great law enforcement here in the metro area, there are still places throughout our state where girls are treated as criminals when they should be treated as victims. And what safe harbor legislation does is it provides immunity from prosecution so that children always receive services instead of incarceration. There are about 14 other states in the country right now with safe harbor laws, and we're looking at that this session here in Georgia.
Now tell me who's joined the campaign for this desired law.
Well, Senator Renee Unterman has been a champion in the fight. We also have Rachel's Act that is led by Representative Welch as well. And we have lots of managing partners and groups that advocate for this law. The one thing about safe harbor protection that we must recognize is that it is very complex. It looks different for every state, and it's also something that has to be worked through so that it's supported by the juvenile courts. It's supported by law enforcement, and that we can always keep a victim-centered approach when it comes to the kids.
Now, speaking of partners on a day-to-day basis, what organizations and agencies are with you there on the front lines?
Well, I think with the great movement that we've had here in Georgia, it's not just nonprofit organizations or NGOs that are really fighting this fight. The Attorney General Sam Olin's office has a leading charge, Georgia's not buying it, to address the demand side of this issue as well. We have a lot of different organizations such as Georgia Cares, which is the statewide system of care for all victims throughout the state of Georgia. Also Street Grace, which is a denomination of churches that can provide education to the faith-based arena. But one of the really great things is that we have more civic groups, more organizations, and more youth organizations that are joining on the fight so that we can have a proactive approach and reach the kids before the traffickers do.
Now tell me, what else do you need to win this fight? I imagine every day people can be a part by being vigilant, keeping their eyes and ears open.
We just have to recognize that this is not something that happens to someone else. This happens right here in our community. And the number one thing that we have to do is educate ourselves. And if we don't bring the youth into the conversation, I feel like that we're doing an injustice. I've seen a lot of teenagers who've been really passionate about social justice issues. And I think the best voice in this fight is going to be that of our young people. So we really want to make sure that as much as we're engaging parents to start the conversation, as much as we're engaging schools to start the conversation, we have to empower teenagers, because I really personally believe that if we can reach the teens before the traffickers do, they will less likely become a victim, and dare I say, less likely to grow up to become a buyer.
Now, tell me how people in general, the average person, how can they become a part of this movement?
Well, I would say, number one, find an organization where you can just join in and get the one-on-one. I think there's lots of great organizations out here, so whether or not you want to serve on the front lines and rescue kids off of the street, whether or not you want to write letters to your legislators, or whether or not you want to just spread the word within your community, there's a seat at the table for everybody. And I invite everybody to join our organization as a community ambassador. And a community ambassador, you take a one-time 3-hour training where we give you everything you need to know, and we want to equip you to take those resources and that information back into your community. But there's lots of ways to get involved, and I really urge you to join the website and check out the groups on the ground.
And I love what you said, a seat at the table for everyone. Any final thoughts today?
I'm really grateful for FGTV, for this platform, because this cannot be solved by just one group. We all kind of have to hold hands together. And the more coverage that this issue gets, the more time that people recognize and put in and say, this is just as much as important as the tax issue, it's just as much as important as poverty, it's just as important as housing, then we'll all see forward movement. So I really thank this platform for for the information.
And we so appreciate you and your insight on this very important issue.
You're welcome.
Now, okay, one more time, let's give the website for Youth Spark. It's youth-spark.org. We'll be right back. And a special thanks once more for all the great information and insight from Jennifer Swain with Youth Spark. And of course, as always, a special thanks to you for watching. That is all of our time today. We invite you to email us to let us know what topics you'd like to see discussed on Talk Fulton. Email us at fgtv.feedback@fultoncountyga.gov. I'm Yvette Jones. We'll see you next time.